Hi, everyone. I hope you can hear me. I'm not so sure how clear it is, but I am pre-recording Motzei Shabbos daf, or Shabbat daf, I guess, Lamed Bet in Sanhedrin. So I am away again in Jerusalem. So you can see how beautiful it is here. There you go. And I'm on the roof, so hopefully it's clear enough and the internet works and we can get started. So today, Daf Lamed Bet in Masechet Sanhedrin starts a new parak, the fourth parak. So it's a good place. I know exactly where we're up to. And we get into the next details. So we've been talking a lot in the previous prakim about who can say testimony, how things go. We start discussing here exactly how you analyze the witnesses. So says the Mishnah, fourth parak, Echad dinei mamanot ve'echad dinei nefashot. Whether you are talking about monetary things, or you're talking about capital punishments, capital issues, where someone might die as a result of the din. You have to really analyze, be doresh and choker, look into the details, try to verify every detail accurately. Because there's supposed to be one rule for everything, and that means every kind of case, money or not. So what are the differences? Says our Mishnah. That's obviously an introduction. Ma bein dinei mamanut dinei nefashot. Dinei mamanut b'shlosha. As we've already talked about, dinei mamanut, you have 3 judges. Dinei nefashot, you need 23. Asur mishlosha. Dinei mamanot potchim bein l'schut bein l'chova. When you have your beginning of your discussions, your deliberations, you can first start by saying, I think the person owes money. I think the person doesn't owe money. Whoever has an opinion can speak up first. By dinei nefashot, you have to start with a opening for schut. You have to start with an argument, I think they're not guilty. Now, you don't have to finish there. You have to talk about what you really think. But you never start with a argument of guilt. Dinei mamanot, now when you come to conclude the case of dinei mamanot, matin al pi echad, you go with one person majority, whether it's schut or chova, whether 2 say he owes the money or 2 say he doesn't owe the money, that's the majority. Dinei nefashot, you can be matin al pi echad schut. Sure, if you have 12 to 11 that say he's innocent, then he doesn't get killed. But you need shnayim, the chova, and we'll see in the Gemara all the details about how you get to 2, but that a one-person majority is not enough to make a person guilty. Dinei mamanot, machzirim ben schut ben chova. Dinei mamanot is something we're going to discuss a lot today. You can change the halacha. If you realize after the case that they made a mistake, you go back and you undo it, whether it's to say that he's really truly innocent or truly guilty. But dinei nefashot, you're only machzirim the schut. If you initially said the person was guilty, you can then get new evidence and go back and say zocha is not guilty, but ein machzirim the chova. You don't go back once you've said they're innocent to say that they're guilty. Dinei mamanot, hakom lamdun zchutu chova. In dinei mamanut, everyone who's there, meaning not just the judges. Remember, there were rows of talmidim and other associates in the courtroom. Anyone's got a point to make can write it on a piece of paper, like a Zoom meeting, and they can add their point, whether it's zchut or chova, when they see a reason that he owes money or doesn't owe money. The dinei nefashot, hakom lamdun zchut. Anyone present who says, "Oh, I've got a rationale for why he's not guilty," can speak up and say it. The ein hakol melamdim chova, but not everyone, meaning if you're not one of the real judges, can say chova. Dinim amanut, very interesting halacha. Among the judges, if you start off with an argument that's melamed chova, you initially say, "Oh, I actually think he owes the money," and then you realize from more evidence that things are different. You can be melamed zchut. You can change your argument. Hamelamed zchut, melamed chova, and if you initially thought he was innocent of the charges, you can say he's chayav. The dinei nefashot, a judge who starts off by being melamed chova, initially saying that I think he's guilty, he can be melamed zchut. He can change his opinion. Aval melamed zchut, if you initially say he's innocent, ein yachol lachzor melamed chova. You can't argue that he's now guilty. Now, of course, you're allowed to vote that he's guilty if you change your mind. But if you hear all the arguments and say, wait, he actually really did it, you can say that. You don't have to go with your original opinion. But we don't let you be the person to argue it, because we say once you've stuck with an opinion, you've got to keep it as far as you can until you actually change your mind. Dinei mamanot, next case, by money danim bayom, you actually can do the judgment during the day. V'gomrim b'layla, you can finish it at night and issue the ruling even at night. Dinei nefashot danim bayom v'gomrim bayom. Dinei nefashot, you have to finish it during the day. You cannot finish it at night. Dinei mamanot gomrim bo bayom. You can start a case and finish it that day, which hopefully would be the majority of cases. You hear the evidence, judges rule, whether it's for innocence or guilt. If all the judges get together and say, there's no way this guy did it, you can just decide that the same day. But if you're going to conclude that the person's guilty and he's therefore going to be killed, or we'll see what dinei nefashot includes other punishments, you have to at least leave it overnight. Lefikach, and therefore, since we don't want someone to wait, ain done in lo be'erev Shabbat lo be'erev Yom Tov. You never have court for dinei nefashot on erev Shabbat or erev Yom Tov because you know it's going to have to go the next day if you find them guilty. You obviously can't do judgment on Shabbat and Yom Tov, and the guy's going to sit waiting in the middle of the case. It's very unpleasant, and therefore we never start a capital case on a Friday. Finally, are we up to finally? Almost, yeah. Dinei mamonot hatmeot v'tarot. Right, if you have dinei mamonot, which includes things that you're deciding if food is tamei or food is tahor, which is obviously a monetary thing. If I make your food tamei, I got to pay you. Those things, you always give right a first argument to the greatest person there, and then other people can make their opinions known. But obviously, that might shut other people up. And you've always been in meetings where the one person speaks, and everyone agrees, right? But dinei nefashot, dinei nefashot, you start from the side, which usually means the side of the least consequential judges, so that we don't hear from the most consequential person and then silence other people. Hakol ksherin ladun dinei mamonot. Everyone is kosher to dan dinei mamonot as long as they're knowledgeable. But not everyone can be a judge for dinei nefashot. Ella, the following categories, you have to be either Kohanim, Leviim, Yisraelim, who are Misiim Lekuna. So people basically with Yichus. So they're Kohanim or Leviim, or they're Yisraelim who would be allowed to be married into the family of Kohanim because they have clean Yichus in their family. Now says the Gemara, this we're going to go through obviously all the parts of our Mishnah like we've been doing with the previous prakim. Is it really true that dinei mamonot mi'bein and trisha v'chakira? Do you really actually in dinei mamonot? Remember, you have to check the judge, the witnesses. Right? A witness says, "I saw Ruvain lend $100 to Shimon." You say to them, "Are you sure? Did it really happen? Tell us again." Right? That's checking the witness. But then trisha v'chakira goes beyond that. It's to sort of say, "Well, where were they? Right? What time of day? What color shirt were they wearing?" Like details that are not necessarily integral to the loan amount, but give some credence as to whether this person is telling the details, right? Whether he was there. So is that true that by dinei mamonot you have to do shavet chakira v'aminu? What about the following braita, which we've quoted many times before? Let's say you have a shtar. You have a document that says Ruvain owes Shimon $100, but zmano katuv echad nisan b'shmita. But it's written the first day of Nisan during Shemitah. Now, it's really strange that Shemitah, the person would write a shtar in Shemitah, because remember, all loans get rid of at the end of Shemitah, but we'll get to that detail in a second. But that's what the shtar says. And Bo Eidim V'Amru, now, there's Ruvain and Shimon, the witnesses say, we saw, or we have a document that Ruvain lent money to Shimon. Witnesses come and say, how did you sign on that shtar? To the aide, who let's say the aide's name is Levi. How could you, Levi, say that you saw Reuven lend money to Shimon on Echad ben Nisan? On the first day of Nisan, we were with you on a cruise in the Hudson River. You couldn't have been in that place to watch this thing happen. Says the Braita, it doesn't matter. Shtar kasher ve'edav ksherim. Doesn't matter. The document could still be kosher. The eidim could be kosher because it's very possible. Cheshinan shema icharu v'katvu. It's possible that they actually made a later date in the shtar than it actually happened. They watched this happen, say on the first day of Adar, right, when they were together. The first day of Nisan, it's true. Levi could not have seen this happen, but Reuven and Shimon agreed that although this happened on the first day of Adar, you're allowed to write in the shtar that it happened on the first day of Nisan. Remember, the only person who loses by such a thing is the lender, right? Because any field that Shimon, who borrowed the money, sold between the first day of Adar, when he really did the loan, and the first day of Nisan, when it says it, will no longer be beholden for the loan, right? So you can't collect from those fields. But as long as Reuven says, I accept that, right? I'm willing to write a later date, that's fine. So you see here that we says the Gemara, if you really need to investigate these witnesses and corroborate all the details, how could you say, maybe they wrote it later? Then obviously you can't ask any questions. How are you supposed to investigate the details when you say, well, maybe the details are wrong? Clearly, we don't care about the details. Says the Gemara, that's an interesting question. But I don't understand. The Mishnah in Shvi'it, which we've quoted many times, seems to contradict this Braita also. You're reading the Braita literally. What about the following Mishnah? The Mishnah we've quote that says, if you have a shtar chov, which the date of the shtar is earlier than the date it happened, that's puzzle, right? Meaning the loan actually happened on the first day of Adar, but they wrote the first day of Shvat. That's obviously disastrous because anyone who bought property between the first day of Shvat and Adar now is on the hook for a loan that they really shouldn't be on the hook for. But says the Mishnah, Mucharin Ksherim. But if it's later, it's kosher. If you say you have to investigate all the details, how could you say that the date's not specific? It could be, say, one day, but be a shtar that's Muchar. Mucharin Amai Ksherim. So why'd you ask a question from a Braita, a Tosefta? Why don't you ask from a Mishnah? Mishnah is always a stronger thing to ask for. Says the Gemara, well, it's true. The Mishnah is a good question. But I was asking from the Braita, hello, Kasha. That's not a problem. That why I asked from the Braita. I asked an even better question from the Mishnah. Because this shtar is very strange to begin with. Who writes a shtar during Shemitah? So people don't generally lend money during Shemitah because, like I said, all the loans in Shemitah get canceled. So at the end of Shemitah, so you're lending on Nissan. If he doesn't pay you back in 6 months, it goes away, right? So you might say, well, then it seems very unlikely that a person would be willing to post-date the shtar because they're already hard to collect in Nissan. The Lekal Meimar, you might say in that case, you don't say you don't want to do something to make the shtar even worse. It's already a problem because it's Nissan. Okay. Send it 5 דקות. The Lekal Meimar. You don't say that that maybe they wrote it later because that would make the shtar even look worse. However, even so, since Shviat is Sofo Mishametet, they said it's a little bit of a problem. I'm going to take a little pause here because apparently I'm getting kicked out. Stay with me for 1 minute, 2 minutes, and then we'll continue the video.